Welcome to Garden Wise Adventures. My name is Malie, and today I wanted to talk to you a little bit more about drought and drought restrictions. Now, I did a video last week showing you where my watershed is, where I get the secondary water for watering outside. Now, when we talk about drought and water restrictions, there are different places where we can save water. Inside, we can definitely put in low flow toilets, put in water efficient appliances, and be really careful about how much water we use inside. But that's not what I wanted to talk about today. Because this is a gardening show, I definitely wanted to talk about the outdoors and the landscape and what you can do to conserve water in your landscape. Now, as you can probably see behind me, I have a very yellow lawn. It's because I haven't watered it at all this year. Now, am I going to advocate getting rid of all lawns and not watering your lawns at all? No, that actually is not going to happen. I actually do love lawns. I think there is a definite place for them, but we do need to be very careful about how we use lawns. And after we talk a little bit about my front yard, I'll go show you my lawn in my backyard and show you what it looks like, which is a little different than what it looks like in the front. So let's look in my front yard and show you what I've been trying to do to conserve water, and hopefully it'll help you see different areas where you can conserve water and still have an attractive landscape. When we talk about water restrictions and drought, we don't want to turn our landscapes into barren rock fields. That's not the goal. The goal is to have a beautiful landscape using water as efficiently as we can. So let's look at what I've done. Now, the first place that I wanted to show you is something that I did last year. And I didn't necessarily do this for water conservation as much as how much easier it was to maintain and how much more I actually liked it. This landscape is very easy to maintain. It takes some maintenance a couple of times a year where you go through and prune back the spent flowers. But this takes very little water. This gets watered twice a week. And I have it on a drip grid system. So the drip is spaced, it's a little odd on this area of the landscape because it's the end, but it's spaced, 1.5 feet to 2 feet apart. And I spaced it that way because I was going to have larger plants with larger root systems. And I did have to water it a little bit more last year. I watered it about 3 times a week, and now I will hand water if I put new plants in it. There is one plant, let me show you back here, that needs a little more water. And that right here is my beautiful little hydrangea paniculata. Hydrangeas are known to need more water. Now, what will happen with this one is it actually gets water from my neighbor's grass. It flows over here a little bit, which has not been a good thing for my chokeberry. The chokeberry does not like the amount of water it's getting. So that is going to need to move, and maybe I'll put another hydrangea in. But you need to look at the plants that you put in and see if you have a situation where it's going to get a little bit more water than the rest of the area or a little bit less, and plant accordingly. So let me show you some of the plants that I'm using so you can see the different variety of drought tolerant plants that can be watered twice a week. This may end up being moved to once a week next year as the plants mature. So up here, and this does get more water because of the neighbors, but this is a laced up elderberry. And it can be really quite drought tolerant, and it can tolerate more water. So this is an excellent plant for this spot. This right here is a pineapple ground cherry, and until recently I've had to hand water it. I'll just bring a watering can up here and water it a little more often, because this is an annual and it doesn't have an extensive root system, but it does get more water from the grass, so I've been having to water it less and less. Now, this is a chokeberry or aronia, and as you can see, it's got a lot of chlorosis, and that is because it is getting way too much water for its liking. So in the fall, probably in September, I will move this plant to a better place. We've got another elderberry. This is a Lemony lace elderberry, and it's very happy in its spot, although it is getting a little bit of sunburn, so it could probably deal with a little bit more shade. But all in all, it's doing really well, and it does only get watered twice a week. My figs seem very happy with the situation. Another really wonderful drought tolerant plant is butterfly bushes. This one's a pugster butterfly bush. You can see the buds starting to get ready to bloom. And there's a lot of different varieties that are very drought tolerant. Irises can take almost no water, very drought tolerant. And the same with pistachio trees. Now I'm going to need to watch this one because it is getting hit a little bit with the neighbor's water, but it seems to be in an area between two sprinklers where it's not getting hit as much as the other things are. Right here we have my gorgeous chase tree, Vitex Agnes castus. Very drought tolerant, very wonderful trees. I absolutely love them, and it thrives off 2 days a week. My currently smothered yarrow, moonshine yarrow, very drought tolerant. I'm going to have to move the switchgrass, which is also extremely drought tolerant. I didn't visualize well enough how big these would get, so I'm going to need to move these in the fall to someplace else better. Another really drought tolerant plant is the lilies. They seem to do just fine with twice a week. And the Glow Girl spirea, which is one of my favorite plants to use. The new hypericum, or St. John's wort back there that I have, that has the gorgeous, gorgeous dark leaves, seems to be quite drought tolerant. It's doing really well in its spot. You can see my Autumn Jubilee 9-bark. It is getting way too much water because of the lawn there, but I just don't know if I want to move it because it's so big and established. We'll see what happens with that. But it is definitely getting too much water. Very drought tolerant plant. Along with the hardy hibiscus, which has a ton of buds getting ready to bloom. You know, we do have a couple more weeks before they're completely ready, but an absolutely gorgeous drought tolerant plant. Now the ones that are shocking me are my little pansies. They're not summer bloomers, they're spring bloomers. They like the cool weather and they like a lot of water. Well, I hand water these maybe once a week, along with the twice a week watering they get with the drip irrigation. So these get watered 3 times a week. They have not stopped blooming. They have not burned up. And I'm just not understanding what's going on here, but I'm not going to complain. But they are surrounding the sedum, which absolutely needs drier conditions. Lavender's another one that is absolutely gorgeous. This is Wee One Lavender, and last year it bloomed through October for me. And it only gets twice a week watering and is absolutely happy. Now this new Daphne is looking a little drought stricken. This area right here, you know, it's a new plant, and this area right here, you can see how far apart the hoses are, the drip irrigation hoses are, and it may need to be hand watered a little bit more, but from what I've heard, the fastest way to kill a Daphne is to water it too much. So I've been trying to watch it and just water it when it's looking really drought stressed. Hasn't died yet, so I'm happy about that. And then deep in here, getting ready to bloom, is another extremely drought tolerant, beautiful plant, and that's the black-eyed Susans, which are right next to my drought tolerant, I think it's Baby Jean, but anyway, it's a weeping blue spruce. So as you can see, you could be drought tolerant and full of plants and gorgeous. Now one thing that does help is the mulch that I put down. I do need to add another layer of mulch, but the more mulch you can put down, the less you have to water. So if I can get a much thicker mulch down here, I will probably only have to water once a week, especially once the plants are well established. Now for the grass. I absolutely killed this grass on purpose. Not because of the drought, but because I'm going to be switching this over to some hardscape and some more plantings. I really did not want lawn in my front yard because I just really don't use it. I don't like mowing it, and I really needed more area to plant the plants that I like. So I have drought tolerant plants in here. We're going to cover them with a heavy mulch. I have not added drip irrigation to this one spot right here yet because I'm waiting for the construction to be done. Once the construction is done, I'm going to, possibly in the fall, maybe next spring, I'm going to divide out some of these plants and we're going to change the shape of the bed a little bit. And then I'll put the drip irrigation in. But I did put drip irrigation in over here, and this area also only gets watered twice a week. And you can see some more of the plants that do well. There's the daylilies, more irises. This area is going to change up quite a bit. Get some new plants. The actual lilies. And then there's some plants that need a lot more water. This right here is another ground cherry. It's the Schoenbraun ground cherry, or golden physalis. And it's an annual that needs more water, so I will just come and hand water each one of these, an extra time in the week. If they're starting to look drought stressed, I'll just hand water them. Echinacea is another gorgeous plant that is drought tolerant. And so is the Mexican feathergrass. Another gorgeous drought tolerant plant is your catmint. So now here we are in my backyard. This is one area right here that is not drought tolerant at all. This is on the north side of my house. It's in the shade and it's attached to my garden beds. So it does get watered 3 times a week with drip irrigation, which doesn't equal a lot of water. So if you have an area that has shade and that you can attach it to a system or hand water it more than twice a week, you can have a couple of different areas that are not as drought tolerant and not hurt anything. Next thing I wanted to talk about is my garden beds. All of those are on drip irrigation, and the irrigation only goes on inside each garden bed. So we have 7 garden beds up at the top. We have 2 garden beds down here. And then we have small 1/4-inch drip hoses to each one of these plants. So every plant is very targeted with the water. We don't have water covering this entire area. So there's a wide open area that has no water, so the weeds don't come through. And then we have very targeted water to just the plants that I want to have watered. And these get watered 3 times a week. So do my garden beds. And if my garden beds are looking a little parched, I'll go through and hand water, but I usually only need to do that once a week. So garden beds are watered 3 times a week with the drip and once a week by hand. And that seems to be sufficient to have healthy looking plants. Now there are times where I will have to water more than 3 times a week, more than 4 times a week. And that's when I've planted new seedlings. As you can see in here, I've got some corn coming up. They're just barely sticking their little heads up, and they do need a little bit more water right now. But as soon as they're up a little bit further, I'll start dialing back the water on these, and I just hand water them so I can come up and look at them each time and see how much water they need. And they'll probably get to the point where they only need the same amount of water as the rest of the plants. Now another thing I did is, for some reason, and I think it's because I packed this garden bed completely full of tomatoes and they have an extensive root system, this bed has suffered from drought more than the other beds. I've had to hand water here a little bit more than the other beds. So what I did is I decided to try and put down grass clippings. These are fresh grass clippings, which isn't the best thing to use. You need to let them dry out a little bit. But I'm fluffing them up so they don't rot, and we have dry weather, so that'll help keep them from rotting. And it really actually seems to have helped a little bit. You can see a little bit of drought stress. Maybe there's a little bit of disease starting on this one. I may need to look at that. But they didn't wilt as much today as they have in the past. So hopefully mulch will help, and if this mulch helps this bed, I'll mulch the other beds with grass clippings too. You can do it with straw, you can do it with leaves, whatever you have available you can use as mulch. Now the last thing I wanted to talk about was grass and how you can be water efficient on grass. As you can see behind me, my backyard grass looks a little different than my front yard grass. Now I don't water the crap out of this grass. This grass is only getting watered twice a week. It's only getting watered twice a week because we've got the shade trees in the back, and we've got that are on the east, and then we've got the house on the west that shade this area quite a bit of the day. The other thing that I've done for this grass is I fertilize it appropriately. I fertilize it 3 times a year, spring, summer, and fall. I guess there's fireworks that you can hear. And then I water it very deeply. These are rotors, but they're rotors that are in a very small area. So these rotors go off for 25 minutes, twice a week. And that in this area ends up being a deep watering because there's only 3 rotors on each station now that we've cut the rest of the lawn off of them. So water deeply and infrequently. And I also drought stress my lawn in the spring. And what that means is I don't water it until it turns a silvery color and you can see your footsteps, and the footsteps don't bounce back when you walk across the lawn. I drought stress the lawn in the spring to that point, and then I'll water it really deeply. So I'll water it actually twice in this, the normal amount of time. So it gets 2 waterings at the 25 minutes. And then I'll let it sit until it's drought stressed again, until the color changes and the footsteps don't bounce back. And then I will follow whatever the state watering system is. Right now it's twice a week, but normally it gets watered 3 times a week. Now that I see that this lawn can handle only twice a week, I probably will not go back to the 3 times a week. So let me show you one area where it actually does need more water than this is getting, that is here in my backyard. So right over here behind this gate, this is my old dog run. No dogs anymore. But as you can see, this area of lawn is really suffering. Now there's not a lot I can do about this because the sprinklers here are attached to the sprinklers over there, and I don't want to overwater the lawn over there just so this strip can green up. Now you can see the green along the edge. Number 1, that gets shade, and number 2, it gets the excess water from the neighbors. And if you look up at the top, it's green at the top where it gets the shade. And it's always dead in this area because it's on a slope, and no matter how many times I cycle this area, it's on a slope facing west. It just gets baked and the water evaporates and runs off, and it's just, I've given up trying to grow grass on here. But normally 3 times a week watering keeps this area completely green. Now I've got to decide what to do about it. I may need to start hand watering a little bit. As you can see, it's thinning out quite a bit, and I really don't want the grass to die out here because once I get dogs again, I don't want them running through mud. We're not going to be able to put gravel or mulch on this hill with dogs running up and down it. So grass is just about the only thing I can do here that I can think of at this point. If you can think of anything else, let me know. And the other thing I did, this is purely because I didn't want to use the water up against the house, is I let the grass die. The sprinklers for this area were attached to the front sprinklers. So because that area was converted over to a drip system, I had to cap off the sprinklers here, which was no skin off my back. It made me happy to get rid of the grass here. And once I get the front done, the gravel that we use in front, we'll just use it here also. So hopefully I've been able to give you some ideas that are helpful for you in how you can be a little bit more water efficient. Because as I said in my last video, we can blame anybody else we want. We can look to other people and say, if they don't conserve, I won't conserve. But if we do that, then we're not going to get anywhere. Our responsibility lies with us on our properties. And as you can see, you can actually conserve water, not use that much water, and still have a beautiful property. Water restrictions and drought does not necessarily mean all rock. Now, if we're not careful, I'm not saying that it would happen this year or maybe even anytime soon, but there may come a time when we've used all the water resources that we have and we may all have to go to gravel, so that we can help avoid possibly getting to that spot. It'd be wonderful if we could all start conserving water right now. So I hope you liked this video. If you do like this video, please like and subscribe. Let me know what you're doing, if you found any different ways to conserve water, and go have a wonderful garden adventure.